Good morning, good evening, good afternoon to all those of you who are joining us today for this session from all the different parts of the world. My name is Pallavi. Welcome to the Inquiry Educators Summit 2022, and I'm here today with Yong Zhao for this very exciting session about learners without borders. We'd love to hear where you're joining us from for this session. While we wait for everybody to settle in, do please put that down in chat. Tell us where you're joining us from, what your names are. We'd love to be able to see what parts of the world are represented at today's session. Hi, Caroline from Germany. I can see quite a few familiar names already popping up, and quite a few folks joining from my part of the pond as well. We've got Lucy from London. Hi, Lucy. This is going way faster than I can read, but I can see there's lots of folks joining us from different parts of the world. Somebody's here from Mexico, El Salvador. There's someone from one of my favorite cities in the world, which is Bucharest. Thank you so much for putting that down in the chat. Thank you. Please continue to let us know where you're from. Hello to Maggie from Cambridge in the UK. Hello to Diksha joining us from Jaipur in India. Nikki from Budapest in Hungary. Rana from Salam in Azerbaijan. I think the only thing this is doing is making me miss how much I've not been able to travel these past 2 years because of the pandemic. So I am getting a little jealous to see all those cities in the chat right now. So I'm going to stop reading that and I'm going to come back to that later. I will start the session now with a few housekeeping notes for everybody. In this keynote, Yong will not be able to hear you, but he would love to hear from you in the chat. So do please keep the chat going with all of your thoughts, your reflections, your questions. We'll keep pausing from time to time in the middle of the session to pick up your questions. To those of us who are joining us on the YouTube live stream, our team will be relaying your questions to Yong. So please feel free to put them on the YouTube chat as well. The webinar that you're attending today has not been endorsed by the IB and has been developed independently. And we're very excited to be bringing all of this exciting thoughts from Yong over to you. Before I pass on the floor to Yong, just wanted to let you all know a little bit about Toddle. As you're all aware, TIES is a Toddle initiative. It's a community initiative, and Toddle is a teaching and learning platform, for those of you who aren't aware, which helps teams connect on curriculum planning, portfolios, assessments, reports, and a host of other things. We also have actionable resources that teachers can take back into their classrooms, which we house on our website section called Toddle Learn. In case you're interested in getting hot and fresh updates every month about new resources that we launch on Toddle Learn, please don't forget to subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Learning Lemonade. The link for that is on the chat right now. So you can just click on that and subscribe. Much like TIES, we do very regular PD events for all of our teacher friends out there. Our main objective at these PD events is to help teachers learn from one another, share best practices, and grow together. For today's session, if you're having fun, if you're learning new things, if you've got new thoughts that have been activated in your head after listening to Yong, do feel free to go out there on social media and post about it. We'd love to hear how your experience at this session has been. All of Toddle's handles are on your screen right now for Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. Don't forget to use the hashtag ToddleTies when you're writing about today's session. On that note, I am going to hand over the floor to Yong Zhao. Yong, over to you.
Thank you, Pallavi, and I hope everyone, watching this will be reminded of the war in Europe. It's very sad. It's completely nonsensical. It's irrational, And it has a lot to do with education, how we educate our children for the future. That matters a lot. I mean, it's unbelievable that in the 21st century, we're not talking about development. We're not talking about getting better, more peaceful. We're fighting a war which has huge sacrifices for all the individuals. And I also want to thank those who are from the countries that are taking care of refugees. And it is unbelievable. I just have been distracted a lot, So I have been teaching for, God, 37 years. I'm almost going to be 60 years old. I've been doing a lot of reflection about education. We do a lot of professional development. We do a lot of learning like this. And I was just wondering, when you attend a session like this, what do we learn? How do we learn? What is going on with this? COVID has isolated all of us, and at the same time has created new opportunities for all of us as well. So we're connected. We're in many ways connected better, focusing on this idea of education. But COVID has also created something that's really amazing. The first thing I've learned from COVID is that teachers can change, education can change. Globally speaking, all our teachers, our educators have really transformed themselves. You can stop and go with face-to-face learning or in-person learning, then you get online. So everybody should be very happy about our ability to respond to emergencies like that. And we, as a profession in education, have been said to not be able to change, but we've changed. We've experienced new learning possibilities. We've experienced new ways of communicating with our colleagues from around the world. We've experienced communicating with parents. We've experienced communicating with our students in different ways. So all of those, the COVID legacy may be disappearing. So today, I really want to chat with you about how we can maximize what we experimented with force of the COVID and maximize that into something we intentionally design, a different kind of education. How can we do that? That is actually what I want to share with you, for you to think about this issue. As I have I created a title this called Learners Without Borders. And you look at all these children, it's just amazing what they are doing, what they can do. So feel free to follow me on Twitter. That's yongzhao@ed. If you want to find more of what I write, you can get on my website, zhaolearning.com. And right now, I'm actually working for 2 universities. I split my time half a year with the University of Kansas, another half year with the University of Melbourne in Australia. And so if you look at education all these years, what I discovered, our biggest problem in education is actually children. Our children, our biggest problem. A school without children would be the best, right? If you think about, we have a curriculum, we implement it, but we have kids. So our first problem with children is that they are alive. Kids are alive. They think, they desire, they have feelings, they have intentions. That's our biggest problem with our kids. If we would rather have kids who are dead, because we then control that. We can say, okay, by age 7, you will be able to learn to do this. By age 9, you will learn to do this. That's our design. We have a curriculum standards. We design that for every child to reach at a certain point of time, which is absurd. I don't know if you guys have tried anything like throwing birds. I've always enjoyed this. If you're throwing a dead bird, you can really project the trajectory to say, oh, okay, well, at the second 3, they will reach this point. Second 5 reach this point. But if you're throwing a live bird, I don't know if you try, catch a live bird, throw the bird if you can control it. Our challenge in education is we have a dead curriculum. We impose that on all our children, and I hope they will get there as we desire. If they don't get there, we blame the teachers, blame the parents, blame the kids, we provide remediation. But let's ask ourselves, are the curriculum standards, are the assessment truly, truly valuable for all children? Can anyone come out to say, well, I know you guys are doing, a lot of you are doing IB, or IB, or whatever this thing is. Who is there to say the knowledge, the skills we teach works for all children? Probably not. Probably. So we need a question. The first thing we need to question is the idea of a curriculum. Then the second point is that I say, children disrupt our schools, because they have intentions. The second point is children are different. Children are very different. Look at this child. Children are so different. We have all sorts of children. The problem is that, when we have children who look like that, how do we deal with it? What can we do? In our schools, when children come, they're very different. They have different abilities. You've learned about multiple intelligences. You've learned about children have different desires. And you've learned about children have different emotions. For example, we can show you that how do children become different? It is what they're born with, interacting with their experiences. In psychology, we used to believe that what you are born with is the most important. So we try to measure your IQ, measure your personality. We try to measure all of those things. But what you are born with has to always interact with your experiences. Let's assume you may be very good. You're born with the talent in music, but unless and until you have an experience to trigger that talent, you will never be good at music without that experience. It's like you get an orange seed. Until you have water, until you have sunshine, that orange seed will never become orange. It's the potential. Like I thought I could have become a Justin Bieber, the Canadian singer. I never tried that. But when I was born in my little village in China, I never had access to music. So I don't know if I'm good at music. But at the same time, in education, we have another belief. It's the opposite of psychologists. We say, okay, we believe I can teach you anything. We have that view. Yeah, I can teach you. I get a lot of people say, I can teach you music. I say, yeah, sure. I'm sure you can teach me music. But how good can I become? We need to think about that. You can teach everybody to paint, but not everyone will become a Picasso. You cannot force everyone to become a Picasso. So if you think about all our differences, Howard Gardner talks about multiple intelligences. We are born to have different talent in different areas. Some people with the language, other people with music, others with art, others with body, others with understanding emotions. I don't need to show you all of this. We also have different personalities. Some children born to be quieter. Others like to be more outgoing. So all of these differences are the foundation of our development. And we also have different desires. Some people desire power. Others want to become more independent. Some people are very curious. You have students in your school, always want to know what you're doing, but do you have other students who never care what you try to do? And then you have also this diverse experiences, as I mentioned, they interact in a family, communities. Life is, think about, life is filled with randomness. It's random. So when you, like, for example, today, if you get out of the house 3 minutes late than your usual time, you may have a very different experience. So we interact with different experiences, and those experiences can trigger what we do and what we become. So if you think about all of this, what you are born with and what you can become makes all of us have a jagged profile. You will be good in some areas, you will be bad in other areas. So that's really the first strong message I want to share with you. Children are alive, they have intentions, they have purposes, they have a need autonomy. The second thing is that children are diverse. What works for one child may not work for other children. And this is, I think, in education, we don't know how to deal with that. Education speaks problems. We prescribe one curriculum, like the IB, which I like, but still IB, you got 7 courses or whatever you have, you apply that to all children. Government schools do even worse. Government schools are taking the curriculum and give to all children. Then we manufacture what I call losers. We have students who will excel at those. We have children who won't be able to do that. So let's think about, why do we force our children to do those things? Force them into a curriculum. We imagine the curriculum will get our children ready for their future. We imagine that. But there's no empirical evidence to say, oh God, you got this curriculum, you will do better. Do better at what? So think about the future. About 60 years ago, when I was born, in a village in China, and my future was to be a farmer. I was born in 1965, to be a farmer in my village. But I was really horrible at farming. I couldn't drive the water buffaloes, couldn't climb the trees, all of these problems. And so I was really bad at the school curriculum. My school was my village. That's my future, to become a farmer, a peasant. So I was really bad. I failed all my curriculum. Luckily, during the Cultural Revolution, Chairman Mao Zedong, began to try to build schools in rural areas. So I was able to go to school. Like my father said, since you're so bad at farming, why don't you go to school? School became a sanctuary for me. I was able to go to school. The school was not really any sense of a modern school. You got one teacher who taught multiple ages of kids, 40, 50 kids, different ages, no textbooks, really, it was nothing. The teacher was the teacher, the principal, teacher of everything. One teacher, multiple ages of kids. Most of the kids did not know what's going on. They would just hang out there. They didn't know. I happened to be interested in reading. Reading allowed me to hide myself from my incapabilities in the village. And luckily, at that time, school somehow, Chinese Cultural Revolution ended, then things changed and gave me the opportunity to try to become myself, but never had a plan. So in education, our idea to get you ready for the future is a lie. The future is always created by children, by them. not waiting for them to walk in. So that's another message I want all of us to keep in mind, that our education does not prepare children for the future. We want to prepare our children to create a future for all of us, because their future is your retirement. It's my retirement. I worry about that. So I want our children to be good creators of our future. So if you keep that in mind, children are intentional, purposeful, diverse, have their own experiences. Then they come to one size fits all curriculum. It won't work. This is why we have a problem in our education. But at the same time, a lot of schools, a lot of governments, a lot of organizations are working very hard to impose the same thing on all children, and hopefully they can learn at the same time to reach the same level, because we think we're giving them the knowledge and skills so they can be ready for the future. It's not true. Another point I want to make is that all our schools right now, our assessment creates like what I call borders. We line our children through our assessment. Then while those score high are considered good student, score low are bad students. So we have a problem with that. And any assessment we need to think about is a short term, does not capture what we want our, necessarily everything we want our children to learn. So this is another point. I want to show you some of this interesting data. It's people like to talk about data. And so there, let me share the screen. So you can see this. I've shown these slides before, but you can see this. This is basic in 2009 PISA data. Right now, the 2012, 2022, all the PISA data is about the same. Asian countries do the best, and other countries don't do well. These are the top 10 countries. If you look, this was 2009. American education have always kind of followed the education reforms in the US, and also Australia. And these countries always say, God, we got to change our education because we're losing to other countries. Our education is getting worse. Our education is in decline. So this is that. I said, okay, how true is that? So I want to dig out some of the data. So historically speaking, if you look at test scores, what we assess in these international tests, basically, I would say American education is not in decline. American education is not getting worse. It has always been bad. It has been bad for a long time. So if you look at test scores, since 1960s, Americans 12th graders ranked 12th out of 12 countries, 12th out of 12 countries in the first international mathematics study. If you know math, 12th out of 12 countries is bad. It's really bad. You can't get worse than that. But somehow those students who took the test in 1965, the year I was born, they should have retired now. They have not ruined America. They were worse. They couldn't do anything. So why is America still here? So if those data captured what matters in a society, America should be gone. Should not be here. Why? So I began to look into more of this. So in every kind of international assessment, they also ask the question about confidence. I mean, do you believe you're good at this? Do you believe you're good at? Do you think you value this? So what you discover is this: is that, well, we have this is kind of East Asian countries, Singapore, Taiwan, Hong Kong, Japan, Korea, of course, China, all of this. They always outscore American students, but they don't have as much confidence. That is, American students say, I'm bad, but I think I'm good. So you got this kind of a different view of education. So what I started doing, so I began to look into this data a lot more. You basically find out, for example, negative correlation. Countries produce high test scores, students have less confidence and less enjoyment. And you look at this data, it's the same thing. So what happens here? And then, which led me actually write a book about this, is called What Works May Hurt. That is, when you have different ways in education to drive up your test scores, you might be hurting your students. So that, for example, if you're teaching history, in third grade, you got to memorize all the presidents of the US, but you're making students so depressed, they don't want to remember. They began to hate the subject of history. Is it good? Like when you have second, first grade, your students began to hate the school, hate the subject, but they may have to do more homework and then they get good scores, but they have lost interest in education or lost confidence in themselves. Is that valuable? That's the same thing you go on with the PISA scores. For example, PISA scores have negative correlation with entrepreneurship. Why is America here? America has always had inventors, entrepreneurs. You always have somebody go create something. But if your students have no confidence in starting up the business, in trying to reinvent something, is that worth it? And we have seen a lot of this. For example, why is PISA scores have a negative correlation with children's satisfaction in schools? Countries who produce high test scores have less happy kids in schools. We are 12 years in schools. If your children are depressed, are feeling bad all the time, cannot do what they want to do, is that valuable? Is that where we want to go in terms of our education? So I want to think about this, short-term and long-term outcomes. You may have productive failures. That is, your children may not be able to do this thing now, but the way you teach them, help them develop a deeper understanding for the future. A lot of you are doing project-based learning, for example. Project-based learning may not give you as fast, as effective instruction as direct instruction, but it helps cultivate the children's resilience, curiosity, creativity, collaboration in the long term. Can we not think about that? Also, we have maybe unproductive successes. That is, you feel like I can teach you now, and you can be very successful at this moment, but that knowledge does not transfer into the future. Like you teach them some math this semester, but they are not learning much. That math after this test is gone, and then it won't return in the future. Is that worth it? So when we think about all these learning outcomes, we need to think a lot about how do we deal with education and learning. So what we want to do is for you to question in education. First of all, we need to recognize the multiple outcomes. Children education has multiple outcomes. Some are very short term. Like you want kids to memorize a phone number. It's very short term. It doesn't really matter. But if you force them to remember those things, their learning habit, their curiosity may disappear. You want the long term, you want short term. And then, of course, we have instructional outcomes versus educational outcomes. What you teach them, I want you to memorize this week, this month, this semester. But does it transfer into educational outcomes? What kind of person are you? Are you confident? Are you curious? Do you want to do more of those things? Then you have this cognitive versus non-cognitive outcomes. That is, cognitive means, can you do it? Then the non-cognitive is that, do you want to do it? You might be able to do something, but you hate it. What's the purpose? So now in education, what I think we need to think about, we need to think about this. What do we have? Natural born learners, all children are natural born learners. Our students are very diverse learners. Our children are intentional learners. We cannot have the same curriculum apply to all children and test them all the time. What we need to drive is this idea called self-determination. We need to give children the autonomy to decide, to choose, so they can exercise their agency, so they can treat learning as their own. They are responsible for their own learning, and we as adults are supporting, helping, creating opportunities. We challenge our children. We believe they are capable, they're agentic, they can do a lot of things. Second point about learning is mastery. Do our children feel they have control of their learning? Do they feel they can improve their learning? I've seen many education systems in Asia, in the US, in Europe, Australia, New Zealand, is a lot of times children are deprived of the opportunity to think they can improve because they're judged by standardized testing, by teachers who they have no control. We got to have children to believe they can improve. They can learn. People ask me, how do you assess kids? I say, I don't assess kids. They get to do important work, and then we don't give you A's and B's and C's. We look at that product. Is it good? Is it good? Is it good enough to be published? Is it good enough to be sold? Is it good enough to be hanging on the wall? Like, I don't really think giving A's and B's is really, I don't know why we do that. You never get a doctor who is like, I don't have a lot of money. I get a C doctor who is going to cut open my heart. No, you want a doctor who has passed, who's done this. Then, of course, learning happens in relationships. So there's a book I wrote with Michael Wehmeyer on this. It's called Teaching Students to Become Self-Determined Learners. But ultimately, what I'm trying to talk about is really this. This is a book I wrote last year called Learners Without Borders. Under these new conditions of learning and teaching, how do we think about it? How do we think about education? So very quickly, a few things for you to think about. First thing we need to really think a lot about is flexibility. Can you have flexibility in the curriculum? For example, in this book, I talk a lot about, can we have a 3-part curriculum? As governments or any system should and can impose curriculum on all children, because everybody has to live in a society, in a country where you have laws, you have civics, you want children to participate as citizens, but that may be just 1/3 of all the curriculum. What if you waited until kids finish high school and then you test them? Do you know the basic law? Do you know how to vote? Do you know how to behave, as a citizen? Every school is unique, can do different things. Can a school have another part of the curriculum, maybe 1/3, to showcase your local community, your school's uniqueness. So that's 60%. You can force kids to learn, but give them a long time. Then you got 40% of the curriculum, students can decide. Today, if we are zooming like this, we can really learn globally. We can learn globally. So can we learn globally? Can we wipe out? Can we truly wipe out all our borders for all children? What are the borders? As I said, curriculum is a border. We sort all children through this one curriculum. Then look at our schools. We have classrooms. We put children through those classrooms. And we need to change the role of teachers. We have testing, we have grades. Every grade have to go like this, and also grades apply to everything, in math, reading, social studies, science. And if you're in grade 7, everything is in grade 7. But some children may be reading at 9th grade, but math may be 3rd grade. How do you apply to that? So the first thing I want to encourage us, all of us, to think about is flexibility. Can you apply flexibility to all of these areas? I was just showing you, I'm going to show you again this. Can you think about curriculum, testing, school time, facilities, teacher-student relationships, the role of the students, the role of the teacher, think about expanded territory of learning, which is actually bothers me hugely, when I was writing this book, Reach for Greatness, because we have truly a global world. I don't know if you play with TikTok, you go with YouTube, I'm sure, if you want to learn something, there's a lot to learn online. The Khan Academy, and there's new efforts come everywhere. COVID has made that a universal experience for many kids. But why do children still have to learn the curriculum in the classroom? If they want to become great, they can expand the territory of learning. We can think about that. So what can we really do, in thinking about what kind of learning, what kind of education can we recreate? So I have just a few suggestions for you to think about. If you get a chance to read the book about Learners Without Borders, is that, so here's something I was thinking post-COVID. First of all, do not be trapped by the idea of so-called learning loss. I think many schools have said, oh, the kids didn't learn as they're lost. If you don't have something, you've never got something, you cannot lose it. I think it's a lie. There's no so-called learning loss. Meet where students are. Psychologically, social, emotionally, cognitively, they have very different views. They have different perspectives. And we need to pay attention to all the educational outcomes, not just one, test scores or grades or the knowledge. I'm on the commission called NINSET, Commission on Youth Health. This is more of a medical group, but I'm just happen to be. So we're trying to track youth health globally. And when I was talking to a lot of the public health and medical people, they treat schools as a platform. But I said schools affect children's mental health tremendously. I'm in a way kind of against so-called social emotional learning, because social emotional learning should be part of learning. There's no reason to highlight, to separate that. How do we pay attention to all our children? Want them to own their own learning. They need to have the confidence. They need to have the curiosity. They need to be resourceful to create that. So we got to engage students as partners to design our education. We need to engage them in understanding what learning is like. And definitely, I want all of us to not forget remote learning has tremendous value. There are a lot of children who are very happy with remote learning. And remote learning can engage a lot of things in life. So we cannot forget that. Then this is actually a quite interesting article. Why are some kids thriving during remote learning? So this is actually written a while back. Think about that. So, and we need to build our schools back better. I've shown you a number of things. So let me just summarize very, very quickly. I'm sure you've heard a lot about this. We need to favor our children over curriculum. Children are a lot more important than prescribed, predetermined curriculum. If they're interested in learning something, when they grow up, they can learn something. Look at our subjects. We're forcing kids to learn things that may or may not matter. But then by doing so, we disregard their diversity, their intention. Children need to have purpose. So first then, can we pay more attention to each and individual child rather than just the curriculum? Second, we cannot just use our classroom controlled by the teacher as the place to learn. Our teachers, our educators should become organizers, supporters. We should be the curator of learning resources for our children, because all learning needs to be done, has to be done by children. Third, we have a global world. Our children need to and should participate in a global environment to learn from anyone globally, to learn with, as learn partners with anyone globally, and to learn for anyone globally. Learning has to be purposeful. Learning has to be purposeful, and learning is always ongoing. We're not saying, okay, you learn in third grade, then we're done with that. No, learning is human. Learning is human, and all our children should be given the opportunity, the autonomy to learn on their own. And our job as educators, our job is not a teaching machine. Our job is to become a human educator. We are not teaching machines. We're human educators. We grow with our children. And so thank you very much. Pallavi, I'm done.
I was so engrossed in what you were saying that it took me a couple of seconds to realize that you're done speaking. That's how amazing this session was, Yong. Thank you so much. I think the amount of conversation that we're seeing in the chat is only testament to how many exciting ideas your session has sparked off today. And I'd love to see in the chat if there are any questions that we can take on. While people put down their questions, Yong, there are a bunch of really interesting observations that came up in the chat, which I thought I could quickly share with you, and have you comment on a bunch of these as well. The first one was, there was a lot of talk in between about authentic assessments and how, whether it's possible for us to create assessments that actually reflect students, and autonomous learning, or that actually allows space for student agency. And what are your thoughts around, the best way in which we can go about creating these authentic assessments?
That's a very interesting question. I have a battle with those ideas all the time. In my own idea, I've seen a lot of assessment. I don't think you can. Okay, it's because the reason is that learning should be authentic. If it's authentic, you should not have a predefined rubric to judge students. You basically have something to say, okay, oh my God, you're good. You know, like IB uses 7 points. Why is there 7 points? Everyone should get 7 points if you finish that. And you also, if you're not good, you get better, right? You revise, improve, you know, multiple iterations of improvement. But the society and our schools demand we give students a score. We give students a grade. Parents want them. You know, if a school says we don't give grades to parents, parents go crazy. So somehow you have to pretend you do something realistically. But in my mind, real learning, like I don't think, for example, of course, we go back to Steve Jobs. When he created the iPhone, I don't think he get a grade. Oh, that's a great, you know, score 7, maybe 0.5 iPhone. You don't do, you have standards. Is good, you know, how far you go. The same thing with, you know, Elon Musk, Tesla, you know, it's just, oh, okay, then maybe that's 0.5, 3 point. No, think about our children doing authentic work driven by their passion and the strength to solve real problems for other people.
So true. I couldn't agree more on that. And to everybody who's in the session on YouTube and who's also writing messages on the chat, I'd love for you to continue this conversation in the reflection huddle, which will start right about now, as soon as we're done chatting and wrapping up with Yong. I just very quickly wanted to also alert you all that the next sessions that are coming up, there's one with Phil Beadle and there's another one with Jim Knight. If you were to quickly head over to the agenda and filter for today's date as well as session type, you'll be able to access both of these sessions and be able to join both of them, or one of them, sorry. You'll have to pick. There are some very tough choices coming your way today. Lots of amazing sessions and only so many that you can attend at one time. But if you've got a free pass, you can also head over to the session live stream in the channel. So we look forward to joining, to having you join us at these sessions as the day comes to a close. But there's a lot more coming up over the weekend. TIES has only just begun. Just a little word from our teams. If you'd love to learn more about how Toddle can support your teaching and learning practices at your schools, do make sure to scan this QR code or send us an email on hello@toddleapp.com, and somebody from our team will get in touch with you and talk to you more about that. On that note, very quickly talking to you about how we can go into the rooms for the reflection huddle, where I'm going to be joining you, and so is Yong, to continue this discussion. Just click on rooms at the top of the platform menu that you see. When you click on there, you'll be able to see Yong's room, or the room for this session, going live. All you have to do is click on join and walk right into the discussion there with us. Thank you to you, all those of you who have been a part of this session today. The chat was absolutely amazing. I had a great time chatting with all of you there, and I'm sure so did Yong when he was looking at these comments that have been coming in. Thank you, Yong, for such a fantastic, enlightening discussion. We look forward to continuing this conversation in the rooms. See you all over there in just a couple of seconds. Thank you very much.
Kripa, Elsa will send you the password. Elsa will log in to the session by 10:20. Yeah.
Sorry, I was on mute. Yes, I heard you.
जैतू को मैं मैसेज कर रहा हूँ, ठीक है?
Okay.